The heist of the century, 5 years later. What is going on out there, guys? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watch Along Wrestling. Finally back from an extended hiatus, and I will get into all of that as to where I've been in a video down the road, but that's not why we're here today. We are here to talk about Wrestlemania 31 5 years later, hopefully to give you a little bit of an what your appetite over the next 2 days as you get set for Wrestlemania 36, which if you're watching this for the first time live, kicks off tonight. But if it's already in the past and you're watching this at a later time, it's all good. This is a timeless video. We're going to talk about my trip to Wrestlemania 31 because I do think it's an experience, and the experience of Wrestlemania is kind of what has drawn me back into doing one of these videos. It's one of these deals where I was not sure if I was going to do a video this year about Wrestlemania. It's a strange year. It doesn't really necessarily feel like Wrestlemania. But it doesn't feel like Wrestlemania because obviously of what's going on in the world right now. Before I even get to anything related to wrestling or anything to that extent, let me just say that I do know there's a lot going on in the world right now. It's a scary time. It's an unpredictable time with the coronavirus, which has just swept the entire world, and it's unprecedented. And I just want to say, first and foremost, that I do hope that this isn't affecting you too much personally. And if it is, you have my sincerest gratitude. If it's not affecting you personally, though, hopefully you're taking it easy. You're inside. We're all getting through this pandemic together. Hopefully this video will give you a couple of smiles and help you to kind of take your mind off what's going on in the real world. And I mean, we're in this together, obviously. You can see I have a beanie on. The reason is because there aren't any barbers anywhere, right? Like, everybody is practicing social distancing. Everyone is pretty much staying home, and that's what you should be doing right now. So hopefully everyone is okay. Everyone's not going a little too stir-crazy, and we can try to get through this the best that we possibly can. Way down on that list of priorities from all the stuff going on in real life is the fact that obviously this year WrestleMania is way different. There isn't that usual WrestleMania trip, and it got me to thinking because I was over on Twitter and I saw a lot of people this past week saying, I should be going to WrestleMania now. This should be the start of my WrestleMania trip. At first I was like, really, guys? Like, of all things to talk about and all things to really kind of even think about, but at the same time, I get it. For a lot of wrestling fans, like, this WrestleMania trip is their wrestling euphoria. This is that one time of year that they get to go and have a big trip, and they save up all their money all year round to spend a ton of it at WrestleCon and Access and at good seats and WrestleMania ticket packages and everything that comes with being at WrestleMania. So I get it, and I get that, like, for some folks from the UK, folks from all around the world, they don't necessarily have pay-per-views that come around town all the time. They don't have TV shows that come around all the time. For them, WrestleMania is their one annual trip where they get to go out and be a legit wrestling fan. I live in New York City. Last year, I don't even think that was like one of my top 5 favorite years to be a wrestling fan. But if you look through my channel, I was at something like 20-something shows. And other than the shows I went to for the Royal Rumble, most of which I didn't really have to travel that far to. I think Baltimore was the furthest I traveled to. I mean, there's just so many shows that take place in and around the New York City area that sometimes I do take it for granted. And sometimes I don't understand the magnitude of WrestleMania weekend getting canceled because I'm going to shows pretty much all the time. That isn't to say that I don't understand what comes with WrestleMania. So in this video, let's get into it now. WrestleMania 31. Hopefully you guys will enjoy my look back 5 years later at all that came with going to WrestleMania 31 in Santa Clara, California. So WrestleMania 31 was the first year that really my wife and I had really planned and mapped out what we were going to do in terms of wrestling. And remember, my WrestleMania weekends are a lot different than some folks because I usually go with my wife, who's more of a casual fan. So we try to make it a bit of a bigger trip deal than, more of I guess, an all-encompassing vacation trip as opposed to just a wrestling trip. Other than last year, we didn't really do a lot of independent shows. We didn't really do a lot of different types of, like, conventions. We typically stick to WrestleMania, Access, then maybe one or two other things, usually like NXT or Monday Night Raw the night after WrestleMania. But this year, WrestleMania 31 was a little bit different because my job at the time, our plan was let's get there early. I think we were going to do like the weekend in Disneyland because at the time we had really started getting into all things Disney as well. We had gone to Disney World in the summer of 2013, and kind of got to experience adulting at Disney. And so we were really excited to go and check out Disneyland for the first time. But my job kind of put a wrench in that. There was a meeting that I was needed to do at work early Friday morning. They said, I'm sorry, but you're going to need to do that. This is Friday before WrestleMania. So I needed to go to work, and then I needed to jump on a plane basically at like 12 noon from New York City. Actually, it was even later than that. Yeah, I had to go after work. So it was after work. I had to basically jump on a flight right after work from New York City to California. And because of this, and I remember at the time, NXT was really just starting to kind of bubble up on the surface. It had been on the network now almost fully, a little more than a year, but it hadn't started to go into like the Brooklyn shows. They hadn't had the Barclays Center shows yet. I feel like once NXT first went to that Barclays Center SummerSlam 2015 weekend, that was when it was just like it exploded to the stratosphere. So NXT was still sort of kind of on the rise. But that didn't mean that this was not a show that people were really into. And remember, there was no NXT takeover over WrestleMania 31 weekend. Instead, they just kind of announced pretty last minute that there was going to be a show, I believe it was at the University of San Jose or something to that extent, or San Jose Community College or something. It was a university in San Jose that they did this show. And I remember this because San Jose wasn't too far from where Santa Clara was. Obviously, Bailey is from San Jose, so I'll always remember folks were really excited kind of to see Bailey. So we were planning on basically going to California, doing a day in San Francisco, and then kind of getting set for a big-time day in Santa Clara. And the reason for this was really because my wife was a fan of the Bellas, and the Bellas were signing Sunday morning, the day of WrestleMania. And so because of that, she was like, I want to see the Bellas. A lot of the folks that were on the Access schedule on Thursday and Friday nights we weren't going to be able to go to, so we missed a lot of like those bigger names. But the Bellas she saw was on the schedule for Sunday morning. She really wanted to see them, and I believe Lita, who was also on the schedule. So what this meant was Sunday, for the first time ever, we were going to go to Access before WrestleMania, which is a very, very tall task because you've really got to get to Access at an hour before it starts. Access that day was from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. And then basically we just had to kill time until WrestleMania kicked off in Santa Clara. And so that our entire day was like we were going to have one big wrestling day. And that was pretty much going to be our WrestleMania 31 trip. But things ended up changing. So basically what happened was we were over in the airport. And when I get to the airport, I'll never forget my first ever WrestleMania 27. I walk in and I see a bunch of fans and everyone's got shirts on and I'm beaming. I'm like, I'm going to WrestleMania. This is something I've been waiting on forever. And no, WrestleMania 27 did not suck. Don't you dare say that WrestleMania 27 sucked. That's my first live WrestleMania and I won't accept it. But I got there and I remember I was with my buddy James and I looked over at people and I hit him with the Chris Jericho, "Who's ready for WrestleMania, baby?" And everyone let out a big cheer. Maybe only like 2 or 3 people did, but I was amped and it wasn't going to tear me down. So because of this, like once I get to the airport for WrestleMania, I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm stoked. And I ended up seeing some people that I had known kind of like when I was a kid, like when I worked at like the local supermarket. There were kids who also worked there. And they were heading to WrestleMania. They were pumped. They were excited. We got to talk with them for a bit about what they were excited about doing, what their plans were. And that's just, I love doing that. To me, I want to hear about your WrestleMania plans. I want to hear what you have planned. That's pretty much that's the reason for this entire channel, is talking about the live experience of being a fan. So we got to chat with them for a bit. I thought they were cool. My wife kind of had enough of them because they probably went on a little long, and we're going through the minutia of all the different events that are going on that weekend. And so we're heading down there, and we end up landing in the airport way early, right? So we're leaving here in New York, and I want to say we were leaving here at 7 p.m., which would have meant that we would have gotten to Santa Clara at about, I want to say 1 a.m. our time, but it would have been 10 p.m. their time. We end up getting there early. So we get there, and it's like 9 o'clock. We got the quickest flight you'd ever have in your entire life. So when we land, I'm like, oh my god, like if we can pull this off and go get the car rental and hit the road, we could still make it to NXT. So I look at my wife, and remember, this is 1 a.m. our time, so I know she's exhausted. But I look at her, and I'm like, hey, is there any way we could pull this off and get down to NXT in San Jose at the kind of the Armory there, and the college campus, rather? And she's like, sure, see how much tickets are. And tickets were kind of just building up throughout the entire week. They were just like like more and more expensive as it went on because people were excited. People were really stoked. You had, kind of just the start of kind of the women's revolution down there. Finn Balor was really making a name for himself at the time. Kevin Owens was making a name for himself at the time. So you had all these different kind of pieces that were fitting together to kind of make it a really must-see show, coupled with the fact that Hideo Itami had just won a Access, I believe it was a tournament or a Battle Royal, to get into the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And so it was kind of NXT was going to be a part of WrestleMania weekend, and they were going to be a part of the actual WrestleMania show. So it was cool. It was awesome. And it was just like, it felt like NXT was like this super cool, kind of like when MTV used to take the Campus Invasion tour back in the day. I don't know if I'm dating myself here, but you'd take like a couple of cool college rock bands and go on tour. That's kind of how NXT felt. It was taped at a college, and so people were, it kind of appealed to that kind of younger, cooler type of wrestling crowd, your smart type audience, so to speak, the internet audience, I guess. And so people were really into it. So we land, I look on StubHub, $15 tickets. They were like $150 the whole week. I'm like, oh, do we get 2 tickets? There were 2 left, $15 each. I grabbed both of them, and we are now jet setting through the airport. But one of the things I used to love about WrestleMania weekend, and they stopped doing, this is the last year they really did something like this. For WrestleMania 30 and WrestleMania 31, it was like, you got to the airport and you knew it was WrestleMania was taking over. You had all these big pillars with all these posters of all the different big stars that were having matches on the night. I know Daniel Bryan was there, Roman Reigns was there, Brock Lesnar was there, all the big like posters there. It was like literally like welcome to San Jose or Santa Clara, welcomes WrestleMania, and it got you so excited for the show. It made you feel like when you arrived at that airport, you were in WrestleMania City and you were getting ready for all things wrestling and for it to just take over as a fan. So we're over there, we're taking photos with all the different pieces of memorabilia quickly. My wife's getting a photo with Roman Reigns' little kind of deal because she was one of, at the time, one of his only fans. Brock Lesnar, same deal. She's a huge Brock fan, so this was like the ultimate match for her. And I look over, kind of the corner of my eye, and who do I see there but Dean Malenko? And I'm like, oh my god, it's Dean Malenko. So I'm like, to my wife, I'm like, hey, you gotta give me a second, let's just go over there. So I walk over, I see Dean, I'm like, Dean, what are you doing here? He says, oh, I'm part of the kind of, we had a little thing that just wrapped up a little while ago. It was like from 7 to 10, kind of welcoming fans as they came into the airport. He's like, so I'm kind of just here, kind of wrapping things up. I'm like, that's awesome. I said, dude, is it cool if we get a photo? And he's like, absolutely. And his wife, who was just in the Dark Side of the Ring segment, the little piece they did on Chris Benoit, she says, hey, can I take a photo for you guys? We're like, absolutely. She tells my wife, hey, you want to get in the photo as well? My wife doesn't know who Dean Malenko is because she didn't watch wrestling in the 90s. So my wife thinks this is just another friend of mine from back in the day who's all about wrestling. And at this point, she just wants to get the car, get on the road, get to NXT. And so she turns to Dean Malenko's wife and she's like, that's okay. Tommy knows him. That's his friend. I'm not really. And she's like, oh, okay. And Dean is like, kind of offended, and he looks at my wife and he looks at me and he goes, well, hey, I bet if I was John Cena she wouldn't deny the chance for a photo. And so we got a good little laugh out of it. Me and Dean took a photo. I'll superimpose the photo. You can see I am cheesing from ear to ear. If there's anything I love, it's bumping into wrestlers out in the public that you just don't expect to see. And I'm not the type of guy who goes and tries to like see wrestlers in the airport. But this one was this. He looked like he was just there. Like he looked like he was part of something. So that's why I went over to him. And I was just happy to see that out in the real world. And there's Dean Malenko, and he looked super unhappy and super piffed. But it was still cool to meet him, and it was a funny moment. And it was cool because you just do not expect. You're coming in, you're landing in there. All you want to do is just be pumped for WrestleMania, and you see a legend like Dean Malenko standing right there. And I know Dean has recently revealed that he's kind of battling Parkinson's, so thoughts with him. I hope that he's doing as well as to be expected. So at this point, we get the car, and it's the quickest car rental thing. I think, like, for the first time, I didn't get the absolute cheapest car rental, because if you don't know about car rentals, if you go and you get, like, the ones that's, like, $10 a day, $12 a day, $15 a day, those car rental companies will hold your ass up so bad and make sure they try to get you on every last little nook and cranny penny that you have to pay, whether it be insurance that it'll charge, like, $50 a day, and now suddenly it's, like, hey, if I just went to Hertz, it would have maybe been 40, 50 bucks a day, but at least I knew that I was with like a reputable company. That time we did that. We got a great car, and we were on the road. Ended up finding a parking space on the street, which is, what I do. I always try to not have to pay for parking. Parked it on the street, and away we went, and made it into the building. Right, literally the second we walk in, Hideo Itami hits the go to sleep for the very first time ever, and it was awesome. It was just great to be there. Great to see all things NXT. Got to see Finn Balor's entrance for the first time as the Demon, so that was really cool, and it felt like they were amped up. They were ready to go and kind of bring us a show that we hadn't perhaps, something like we never seen before. So even though this wasn't a takeover, this was technically a house show, it really set the mood for what ended up being a really exciting weekend. Next day, went out, spent the entire day in San Francisco. This was cool. It was fun. Loved San Francisco. Got to go to Lombard Street for the first time. Got to go to the bridge, the big, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on I think it's Golden Gate Bridge, the big red bridge that is obviously seen in Full House. Got to take a big photo over there. Got to eat clam chowder and a bread bowl for the first time. Got to go to In-N-Out Burger, which is a tradition whenever we go on the West Coast, whether it be Vegas, whether it be California, always got to go to In-N-Out Burger. So we got a little of that. We were stoked, and it ended up being a really fun day in San Francisco. And then we knew once we got back, this was going to basically be a trip. The next day was just going to be all things wrestling, and we were ready for it. We were excited for it. So next morning we wake up, we go down to Access. Always for me, I have a big soft spot for Access. I know people think it's a little repetitive, and it probably is a little repetitive. It's kind of the same stuff every year. They change up the Hall of Fame portion of things each year. They change up some of the exhibits, but for the most part, you know you're going to get your Creative Superstar entrance. You're going to get looking at artifacts. You know you'll get really frustrated at the immensely long lines and not get to see as many people as you want to see. But for us, we were really into it, and I love Access, and I think my wife enjoys it to a certain extent. I don't think she enjoys it as much as I do, but if you look at my past videos of last year's WrestleMania, we got to go to Access twice, and it was some of the most fun I had had. So we got to meet Lita, which was awesome, and I remember at the time I asked Lita if she had ever considered possibly getting back in the ring for one more match. She said that hopefully she would be able to, and of course years later, she got a chance to be obviously a part of the Evolution pay-per-view, and has been actually in a couple of different Royal Rumbles, and has had plenty of matches, so lo and behold, there you go. So then we were waiting on the line at the Total Divas kind of table there, and we're all excited. This is where the Bellas are supposed to be. We're like, here we go. We're going to beat the Bellas. Now, obviously, my wife was a much bigger fan of the Bellas than I was, but I mean, hey, I can't lie. Like, Total Divas got my wife into wrestling. Total Divas was the first time that, like, on network TV, you'd be able to tune in and see at least some backstage access to wrestling. So, like, I was totally into it as well, and I thought the show, the first couple of years, the show was really good. Probably until they did that whole, like, Natty and Tyson Kidd kind of divorce deal. Then I was like, come on, that's ridiculous. But other than that, we were excited for it. So, waiting on this line, and Bells don't show. And no rhyme or reason, nothing's given. You look at their social media, and it turns out they're just, like, out and about, like, sightseeing. Like, they just blew off Access entirely, and there was nothing there. I mean, they were general admission, so at the end of the day, whatever, it's all subject to change anyway. It's not like they were VIP. So the Bellas aren't there, and so instead, they got replaced by Alicia Fox and Eva Marie. Now, you might be sitting there going, Eva Marie and Alicia Fox? People must have been flying off the line. Yes and no. There were some probably that were, but for us, I remember we were really excited to see Eva Marie just because my wife was a huge fan. She was into Eva Marie. Basically, the second that Total Divas started, Eva Marie was her absolute favorite. That was the person she wanted to see. Sometimes, basically more than anyone else, and didn't think she had the chance because she thought we missed Eva's signing on Thursday. But I guess Eva was added last minute. So we got to go. We got to meet Eva Marie. We got to meet Alicia Fox. I got to tell Alicia Fox I loved her stuff back in 2008. And she said, you make me feel old. But it was really cool. It was awesome. And it was a good experience. My wife was really into it. She was really excited. I got to tell Eva that my wife was such a big fan, which she genuinely did seem really touched by that. Especially because there were fans who were upset the Bellas didn't show up, and so they probably weren't the most respectful to Alicia Fox and Eva Marie, who were doing nothing except filling in for an extra access session. But then, because we obviously watched the show so much, you got to know Eva's family. So after their little deal where we got to meet Eva Marie, we then got to say hi to her boyfriend Jonathan, who was there, her parents who were there, who were like a big part of the Total Divas show, and that was something that like it got my wife really excited. I got her pumped up, got her excited, and it was really cool to see. So that was something that I was into, and I thought was a cool experience at Access. We only got to meet 2 folks. Again, when you go to Access, they've gotten a little better at it now. Maybe next year when Access kind of gets back to normal, I'll talk to you about kind of how things have gotten better at Access and why maybe now it really is worth your money. Back in the day, if you went to Access, you were getting one person during that first 2-hour session and one other person during the second 2-hour session, and if you didn't get anything else, you left. So that's basically what you could expect. Like I always say, go to Access, enjoy all the different artifacts, enjoy all the different photo ops, and then see a star or 2 if you can, because that's basically what Access is. But it's a great hype piece, I feel, for WrestleMania weekend. So it is what it is. Went to the Superstore at the time, got the big WrestleMania shirt, which has that, like, all the faces looking that way. And we were on our way, man. WrestleMania 31. Interesting time to be a fan of wrestling because of the fact that Roman Reigns had just won the Royal Rumble. Roman Reigns was a guy that everyone really turned on super quick because they figured he was the kind of the hand-picked guy. And it's WWE's fault because they brought Daniel Bryan back for the Royal Rumble that year. Had they just held off on Bryan, which they didn't have too many like huge plans for, they gave him the Intercontinental title in the beginning of this show. But if they had just held off and brought Daniel Bryan back the day after WrestleMania, I don't know that there would have been a big backlash on this entire road to WrestleMania like there was for Roman Reigns. So what ended up happening was Roman wins the Rumble, everyone turns on him, and it kind of kills this brand new guy, kind of similarly to how Drew McIntyre has been booked for WrestleMania 36. This guy that the company is getting behind, somebody new in the main event picture, and somebody that is going to go against Brock Lesnar, who may believably beat this guy. So it was something, though, but because they brought back Daniel Bryan for the Royal Rumble, and he said he was going to come back and win, it was like, oh my god, we're going to get our Daniel Bryan world title run that we just lost out on last year because the guy got hurt. Here we go, we're back with Daniel Bryan, let's do it. And instead they went with Roman Reigns in one of the worst Royal Rumbles ever, Royal Rumble 2015. So it was a total train wreck of a show and ended up being an interesting build to WrestleMania, but it was one of these WrestleManias where even though I was excited to go and I was pumped up because I was going to Santa Clara and I was going to California, which I just love, and we had the idea of going down and doing the whole Disney package and that whole deal. At WrestleMania, going into it, I wasn't really that excited for it. It was something where I was like, I wasn't really too into Roman versus Brock because I was 100% convinced they were going to give Roman Reigns the title. I was like, they're going to beat Brock. I loved Brock at the time. I thought Brock was just built like an absolute animal after he ended the streak and demolished John Cena at SummerSlam 2014. But I was convinced they were going to be kind of building up something for Roman Reigns, and this was going to be his crowning moment. So much so that the only thing that kind of gave me a little pause and made it like, hey, maybe they're not going to do this, was when they ended up having Brock Lesnar go on SportsCenter and announce that he had re-signed with WWE, because everyone thought he was going to go back to UFC and this was going to be the end of his run in WWE, especially when they announced that he was going to be on SportsCenter the week of WrestleMania. Everyone thought he's going to be there to announce that he's going back to UFC. Instead, he announced he was re-signed with WWE, and they got to do this on ESPN. So it was actually really cool, and it gave us like, oh crap, maybe this adds a little excitement to WrestleMania now. Maybe Roman's not necessarily going to just go in there and beat Brock. Maybe Brock will retain. And even though we didn't necessarily think that was going to happen, at the same time, like, with that match and the rest of the matches, Daniel Bryan being such a minor player on the show, it wasn't really my deal. I wasn't a huge Sting fan. I didn't like WWE really at all growing up, so for me, Sting and Triple H, I wasn't feeling that. I was almost certain Sting was going to win, so obviously I was kind of thrown off by a lot of the different results. But again, this is WrestleMania, so I'm trying to make the best of the situation. I'm happy to be down there. I'm thrilled that we've gotten to see all these different things, and we're now on our way to go down to WrestleMania, and so we're making our way over that way. So we're leaving Access, we're heading over, we're realizing we have to go back to the car to kind of go down and drive over to WrestleMania. We still have like an hour, a couple hours ahead of time, and I hear a big commotion, and I start seeing a bunch of people bolting down the street. Bolting down, people flying down the street. I'm like, what is going on? And lo and behold, who's standing there? Just a couple feet over from me is Kofi Kingston, and he's standing there, just ended up going to a store, I guess, like right before Mania. had his beats on, and I went over to him and got a great photo with him. And he couldn't have been more nice. He literally stopped, posed for photos with everybody who wanted him, signed for people. Was really impressed by somebody's WWE tattoo. I told him I loved what he was doing with Woods and E, and he kind of was like, "Really? Ah, cool, man. Well, hey, keep supporting us, man, because, you know, that'd be great." And I told him I was ready for his match. Because remember, they fought on the pre-show at WrestleMania 31. So for me, it was like, okay, cool. So we got to see Kofi, so that was awesome. And that's one of the things I love about WrestleMania week, is it's like at any minute you might bump into someone that you didn't necessarily know was going to be there. It might be unadvertised appearances, because these guys are just out and about. They're out living their lives as well. So, you know, maybe Kofi needed something from the store quickly before Mania. So here he is, mere hours before his match, and we got to meet him and chat. And so I thought that was really cool. And he seems super cool. And I always like to try to gauge too. If somebody looks like they're pissed off and they're like, "Hey, I'm just living my life, leave me alone," I'll leave you alone. You're not going to find me hanging out outside of a hotel trying to get autographs as people are leaving. Like, that's not my deal. But if I bump into someone out on the street, hey, I'll always ask for a quick photo. And I feel like if you do it respectfully, specifically if you're looking for a photo, they know if they're signing something, you might very well turn this around and pop it up on eBay. But if you're asking for a photo, most likely you're not doing anything with that. So I think that wrestlers and folks in general are usually pretty cool about that. So, and Kofi was awesome. He was great. And who would have thunk 4 years later I'd be seeing him win the world title at WrestleMania 35. Great moment going into the show. My dad shoots me a text. He says, just letting you know, Rock won't be there this year. He was on SNL last night. So that was another piece that I was like, a little bummed. Because The Rock, at that point, every show we went to, The Rock made an appearance. Like, literally, Raw at the Barclays Center, WrestleMania 30, it was always great to end up seeing The Rock, and he made so many appearances at live shows we went to. So walking in the arena, one of the first things, I just loved it. It was brand new, 49ers Stadium. My wife's a big 49ers fan, so it was cool to see that. She loved Kaepernick, who was like running the town at that point. Literally, his family members were walking around outside of the building, heading into the building for WrestleMania. She kind of knew them from kind of looking at Colin's Instagram and everything to that extent. So we were really just happy to be there and looking around and seeing like this beautiful outdoor venue. It was one of these things that it was really cool to see, and a unique atmosphere. If you've never seen a wrestling show in an outdoor stadium, I highly recommend it. It's way different than anything else that you would ever really be able to experience, because it's just a different air, different, the roof being off, and it's a lot of fun. And one of the things that was really cool about this particular WrestleMania for us was where our seats were located. Now, I'd gotten these seats, and one of the reasons, if you look back at my WrestleMania 35 video, why I got seats that were behind the stage, is because for years, I was getting tickets that were like one section off the floor, right over to the side, and on the side of the stage. And so what that allowed was you would be able to still see the ring, you just maybe wouldn't be able to see a little of the entrance. Totally fine. At WrestleMania 35, we were way behind the stage, not totally fine, and my family hated me pretty much the entire show. But at WrestleMania 31, we had by far the best seats we had ever had. It was so much fun. We were located literally right on the side of where the entrance ramp was. And so because of this, we were a little elevated. So literally right at the edge of underneath where we were sitting, you had all of the WWE superstars who were watching the show, watching it on the side of the ramp below where the stage was. And I'll throw some photos up here now, and you'll be able to see like Paige and Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch. These guys weren't on the show because it still was a year or so before they debuted, or at least a few months. But just seeing them walk in there right below me, and they're excited as all hell to be there. They're taking selfies. They're trying to get someone to take their photo in front of the WrestleMania sign like we would do, like in front of that WrestleMania stage. It was just so cool, and it was so cool to be where we were seated, because you'd see wrestlers running in and out of there all night. Finn Balor taking a photo with his parents. All the wrestlers were there, in and out, and what it really amounted to was a unique atmosphere where we got to watch the wrestlers kind of watch the show and be really excited for everything. And so for me, that really added to a lot of the excitement level over this show, was where we were seated. I don't even know if we saw a full piece of the ring. I think like one of the pillars, because those awful pillars at WrestleMania were blocking the ring, like at least like a corner of it, so it was not the easiest in terms of seeing the ring. But all of our photos, just like literally all the entrances are right there, and I think the entrances really are what make WrestleMania kind of special and what it is. So we got to see Triple H's Terminator entrance, Sting's Crow entrance. We got to see the performance of that great WrestleMania theme with David Guetta and Skylar Grey, Travis Barker, where they're all, that probably the best WrestleMania theme. So outside the box for WWE. Normally they're doing something kind of pop rap, like a Flow Rida, or WWE rock, as I've named it, like a Saliva type music. But this year they had like really cool, trendy music. They performed live, and if you go and watch that, you may be able to see yours truly bobbing up and down and jumping up and down during that musical performance. But I feel like this show really had it all. You had that RKO out of nowhere where Randy Orton hit the crazy RKO off Seth Rollins, where he turned the stomp into the RKO. You had that moment where DX and the NWO came out and interfered in the Triple H and Sting match. Shawn Michaels shows up, sweet chin music to Sting, helping Triple H get a win. I know that really upset a lot of people. For me, the thing that I found more upsetting than anything else was the ridiculous handshake afterwards between Sting and Triple H. And that whole deal for me was just like, what are you doing? It's ridiculous. But you got to realize that for WrestleMania, one of the reasons that you have so much nostalgia and one of the reasons you have so many guys from the past returning is because a lot of folks only tune in for WrestleMania and don't really watch anything else the rest of the year. Like, they want to watch WrestleMania, they don't necessarily want to watch everything else. And I think back to my dad, and, may he rest in peace. This is the last year where my dad was alive, and I remember coming back after the show and him going there and saying, who did Undertaker fight? Put in that match. Hey, what happened in that Triple H Sting match? Because those are the guys he knew. And so you had a lot of that stuff, and you had, showing him that moment where The Rock and Triple H, right? You had that great moment where Ronda Rousey's sitting in the front row, when Ronda's like, her star is just bubbling to the surface of becoming like this huge household name. And here she is at WrestleMania with the Four Horsewomen. Go back and look. You'll see Shayna sitting there right next to her. Now, Shayna's one of the main events, probably this weekend. And she's sitting right next to Ronda. So you had that great moment there. And it was just like all of this stuff just came together. A great opening ladder match. You had the fun Triple H Sting match. You had Rusev on the tank. Even though he lost to John Cena, which was frustrating. But you had that great entrance, the Rusev on the tank. It was just filled with so many great moments. And then the main event came. And when that main event started, I will tell you this, there was a lot of people who just wanted to boo Roman Reigns, and they didn't care about anything else. They wanted to boo Roman Reigns, they wanted to boo him out of the building, they didn't care about anything else, and then the match starts, and it was awesome. I think it was the best WrestleMania main event after 30 to this day, so maybe you're looking at 5 main events, but I do think it was the best one since then. Maybe even better than the 30 main event. It was just hard-hitting. The debut of Suplex City Bitch. The debut of that moment there where Roman starts laughing when Brock's beating the crap out of him. You then have, of course, what I don't think anybody expected. And I remember I was cheering loud for Lesnar. I was so amped at this point. I'm like, this is a great WrestleMania. It's far exceeded my expectations. Lesnar's there. I'm doing the entire entrance with Paul Heyman. I'm screaming, reigning, defending. I am marking out. I'm total loser status, but I didn't care. I was loving life. Screaming for Lesnar. Folks behind us were screaming for Roman. They're yelling at us, let's go Roman. I'm yelling back, let's go Lesnar. And then what happens? You have that moment there where I think it was you hit the double F5. It looked like it was going to be it. Roman was going to beat Brock was going to beat Roman. What was going to happen? They're both laying there, and then boom, Rollins music hits, and it was a moment. I don't care who you were. Nobody saw that coming. And it was great. And I was Daniel Cormier. If you go back and you Google Daniel Cormier WrestleMania 31, you will see DC in the crowd losing his mind when Rollins came in and cashed in. And it was a moment that will live forever in the annals of WrestleMania history. It was one of the best moments I've ever seen live. Crowd just losing their mind, realizing that Rollins was going to cash in. And for me, one of the really cool things is, as this is happening, who runs out? You have all the wrestlers in the back, like, losing their mind, seeing this is happening. So I had Kevin Owens right next to me, like, literally right below me. And if you go back and you watch the WrestleMania 24 on Rollins cashing in, you can see once he wins, Kevin Owens standing there clapping because this was like his best friend growing up in the wrestling business. He's the guy that Owen says went to TLC 2012 to see that Shield match at the Barclays Center, and that was the time where he said, like, if I'm not going to be on a WWE show, I'm never going to attend again as a fan. But he went to see Seth Rollins' first pay-per-view match, and now here he is, a part of WWE. They're cheering on Rollins as he wins the title. I remember even Luke Harper popped his head out from behind the curtain because he was so excited about it. So, just an incredible moment. It caught everyone so off guard, and it was something I'll never forget. The guys at the end of the aisle who were yelling back at me, "Let's go Reigns," and I'm yelling back, "Let's go Lesnar." And at the end, Rollins cashes in. He wins the title. We're all hugging. We're jumping up and down. And that's WrestleMania, man. It was awesome. It was absolutely incredible. And it was so cool because this show started probably around 5 p.m. locally. So by the time it was done, go back and look. There's like 5, 6, 7 matches on the entire main card of WrestleMania. That's all you need. I don't know why they changed their thought process from needing to get everyone from the top echelon of talent getting on the show to needing to get every single person on the show. Love Tamina Snuka. She doesn't need to be on the show. She hadn't wrestled for like the last year. Why is she getting a WrestleMania match? Back in 2015, she wouldn't have gotten one. It was just the best of the best and matches that meant the absolute most, and it felt like they really needed to be on the show. And so everything got time. Everything really meant a lot, and I thought WrestleMania 31 was just so much fun. And for us, it was great. The show ended, wrapped up around 8 o'clock, 8:30 locally, and we jet down, drove through the night, and ended up getting right there in Anaheim, California, where we ended up, they did a SoCal Pass, the Southern California fast fun pass or something to that extent, where you could get like 3 days of Disney, Park Hopper. You got at Universal Studios and SeaWorld. So we had like our 5 days and the rest of our week set being in California. It's a trip I will never forget. And hopefully you guys enjoyed reliving that with me. Next year we'll do a lot more of these. I know that, hopefully if you guys dug it, if you guys were into it, maybe I'll even get my wife to agree to be on, and we could have her get her perspective as well. But, it was a good time for me, and I know that this year it's a different time. There isn't, usually there's that plethora of WrestleMania vlogs you can go and check out and see what's going on Access, get yourself all excited for it. Obviously all that stuff's got canceled this year. Who knows, maybe they'll make a big to-do out of SummerSlam. But I wanted to share my story of WrestleMania 31 with you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your stories. I would love to read your stories. That would get me excited for WrestleMania. Throw them in the comment section below. If it is your first time checking out the channel, make sure you hit a like and subscribe. I'll try to do some prediction videos and some more stuff here moving forward as kind of get settled back in here on Watch Along Wrestling. So hopefully you enjoyed it. 5 years later, the heist of the century, an all-time great moment. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.